It comes with $4 million worth of audio video gear, the latest in equipment. We'll show you some of the photos because it's pretty impressive. But the whole thing is vacant. People are going more and more to multimedia. Look at all the social media stuff. Look at the studios that are at the event center and all that sort of thing. But if you can find a tenant that needs the stuff and you get $4 million of equipment thrown in, that's a good deal. This is highly specialized, but I wonder whether the cinematographers and the multimedia people have contacts where you can call and say, hey, do you know of anyone after a studio? And they may not know, but they make some phone calls. You only need one to say, oh my gosh, yes, we do. We're doing this, or we're doing that, or we just got a contract from a such and such company. We're doing all their we need the studios. Everything is decked out. It is ready to go. Not a thing needs doing to this one. The way if we convert it to residential, you get tenants straight away. There'd be a build-up of people becoming aware of it and referring friends. But I think one day we're going to see things like this and we're going to say, hey, we were on that bus and we talked about it. So the question is, at what point do we pursue it to the point where we implement it? And that's where we need people smarter than me. I don't know the answer to most things, but there are people like Colton knows a lot more about it than I do. We ask him and his contacts, how would this work? And they might say, we're 3 years too soon. Well, that's better than 1 year too late. So remember I say, what's the difference between commercial and residential? Commercial is where commerce is conducted and residential is where people have residences. Well, what about a hotel? People live there. And my answer is yeah, but as the hotel operator, you have to get a new tenant every night for every room. Whereas if you own the hotel and lease it to an operator like a Marriott or a Sheraton or something, then from your perspective, it's a commercial operation. You have a commercial lease with the operator. The operator runs a quasi-residential operation. So the analogy here is we would own the real estate and we would lease out the operation and then someone could get, would they get some of the revenue? Of course, we wouldn't get all of the revenue from, but I don't want all of it. I'd rather have no hands-on and see them once every 5 years to renew their lease. I like the States for real estate for one reason. I mentioned it to some tonight, and that is that it's the only country along with Canada where we can fix our interest rates for the duration of the mortgage. Even a 40-year mortgage, you can fix the rate. In Australia and New Zealand and Europe, that is unheard of. You're lucky to get 5 years interest, fixed interest, and then it goes to floating. They say that in Australia, more than half of all mortgages, commercial and residential, will have their interest rate go to floating rates, to market rates within the next 6 months. That's a phenomenal impact on the market. With interest rates having risen all over the world, affordability's gone down, so it's going to cause prices to come down massively. Here we're immune from that to a large extent. In fact, we get a secondary market because if a mortgage is assumable, then you can get more for a property if it comes with a 2.5% mortgage than if you have to refinance at 7%. So it affects the price in that sense, but you can fix it. That worry is gone. I do it here in the States. It's so easy to beat the average. We can all sit here and find 10 areas that have a growth rate that is higher than the national average. National average is about 9.7% over long term. Phoenix is way above the national average. Nevada is, Las Vegas is way above the national average. Denver is above the national average. You know, another good book to read is the autobiography of William Zeckendorf. Talk about commercial real estate. It's hard to get. It's out of print. Big one, borrow one, get it out of a library. He finds 8 different ways of getting revenue from commercial real estate. And he did some of the biggest. He amassed the land that he then donated, which they built the UN facility on. People say, you invest in Phoenix because you live here. And they kind of don't get the point. No, I choose to live here because I want to invest here. Because I lived in California, San Diego, and San Francisco, beautiful cities. But the taxes are so high there, and the difficulty of doing real estate there was just, it became burdensome. And there are great opportunities overseas. I can rattle off advantages and disadvantages of just about every country I'm familiar with. In New Zealand, there's effectively no capital gains tax. It's not on the statutes. That changes things. So we don't need to do 1031 exchanges because you don't pay the tax anyway. In Australia, you've got stamp duty. It sounds like an odd term. It comes from the fact that you used to have to buy stamps and put them on the contract for the sale and purchase. And it's about 5.5% on a property. It goes straight to the government. It's a punitive tax because you were foolish enough to buy real estate. Of course, they don't see it that way. And talking about psychology, I did an event in Australia, and I talked about the fact that they had a stamp duty tax, and that across the Tasman Sea, their nearest neighbours, New Zealand, they didn't have stamp duty, and they also didn't have capital gains tax. And I'll never forget, a woman stood up in the audience, and with her hands on her hips, she said, "And why not?" You find out that your nearest neighbours don't have a capital gains tax and they don't have stamp duty, and you're indignant and say, "And why not?" Instead of saying, well, if they can get away without it, how come we have it? We should vote for politicians who go up on a platform and say, "Vote for me and we'll get rid of stamp duty." And But you voted in politicians who've progressively put it in and increased the rates. When it becomes the norm and you expect to pay certain taxes and that they're going to go up, then that becomes your new reality. So there are countries that do things differently. Hong Kong. I do like the fact that they've got a flat tax. I think it's 15% personal and 17.5% business. On your first dollar, on your millionth dollar. The fact that we've got progressive tax in most of the Western world, meaning the more you earn, proportionately the more you pay, the government gets a bigger share of it. What an incentive for them to have inflation high. So I love flat taxes. I love the lack of a capital gains tax. And if the effect of a capital gains tax is to generate revenue, it distorts the market because people now don't sell when they otherwise would have, and that skews the market. Or they do a 1031 exchange anyway. So I know this is all philosophical and it doesn't help you buy a property tomorrow, but when you start to see it in that light, and the fact that no one else really thinks about these things, the sky's the limit with commercial.